I'm the founder of National Concussion Awareness Day. When I was a freshman in high school, I suffered a concussion. Most concussions resolve in 7 to 10 days, but mine didn't. For months, I suffered from post-concussion syndrome, which affected my academics, activities, and social life. Sports-related concussions account for 53% of all head injuries in young people under the age of 19. The CDC estimates that 3.8 million concussions happen each year, but as many as half go undiagnosed. If you've had an impact to your head, symptoms may start hours or days later. Watch for headache, nausea or vomiting, balance problems, dizziness, blurry or double vision, sensitivity to light or noise, feeling sluggish or foggy, confusion, concentration, or memory problems. If you think you've had a concussion, don't hide it. Report it to your parents, coach, and doctor, and take the time to recover. Remember, it's better to miss one game than the whole season. Did you know that one concussion, you're 1 to 2 times more likely to have a second concussion? And if you've had 2 concussions, you're 2 to 4 times more likely to suffer a third concussion. All concussions should be taken seriously. This message was brought to you by LessonTheImpact.org. Lessen the Impact is a nonprofit organization bringing free concussion education to school programs, clubs, and civic organizations to New Hampshire. For more information or to book a concussion presentation for your school, go to www.lessontheimpact.org.
Welcome to eYe on Education. As you saw from our opening video, we've kind of let the cat out of the bag as to what our topic will be today. And you know, for years, not much was discussed openly about head injuries. And when it was discussed, it usually centered around athletics, and more specifically, football. Well, times have changed from professional sports all the way down to youth sports in our communities today, and now it's moving into the classrooms. Here in Nashua, a newly developed concussion management protocol was presented to the Board of Education back on February the 12th. Joining us today to talk about what's being done in Nashua and how it came to be is Donna Fitzpatrick, Assistant Superintendent of Schools, and Athletic Director Lisa Gingras. Welcome to eYe on Education.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We were talking before coming on the air. It's a topic that really hasn't gotten a lot of attention over the years. Equipment has changed, protocols for athletics has changed, and now we're moving down into the classroom. How did this come to be, Donna?
Well, initially this fall, Lisa and I worked together to revise the concussion protocol for athletes in terms of return to play activities. And we talked about the fact that it was time to move forward with how we're going to address when students return to the classroom to make sure it's clear to everybody, but to also make sure that we're serving our students the best that we can. And Lisa has done an incredible amount of research and work in this area, so she was instrumental in moving this forward.
Lisa, how does this new policy for the classroom compare or differ from the one that's used for your athletes in the school system?
So there's a lot of different components. Our return to play protocol involves, as our head athletic trainer will tell you, it's a 3-pronged approach. With our student athletes, we have our impact baseline testing. The same online cognitive testing that the pros will use is one prong. Then it's also functional testing. Can students, ride a bicycle for 10 minutes without their symptoms worsening? And then obviously sport-specific activities before they get into full impact contact sport, be it football, soccer, baseball, any of those things. Whereas we took a similar approach with the return to learn, that it's multifaceted. So teachers are involved, the students involved, parents are involved, counselors, school nurses, administrators, etc. And it's a gradual return to learn, just as the return to play is a gradual reintroduction to physical activity and contact sports. Return to learn is a gradual increase to the cognitive activity.
It's interesting, we were talking beforehand, people presume and assume that the most concussions are suffered by football players, right. But that's not true.
It really isn't true. It's not just our football players anymore. We're actually seeing more and more concussions in soccer is pretty prevalent, as well as all of our other contact sports, basketball, lacrosse, volleyball, across the board.
And even with the improved equipment that the young men and women have today on all levels, youth right up through high school and the college professional level.
Right.
I mean, back when I played in school, we had old leather helmets.
Right.
And you looked inside and there wasn't much there.
Nope. No, the technology in football helmets and baseball helmets and catcher's equipment, hockey helmets, things like that is pretty amazing how far they've come since those leather helmets.
So Donna, since you did your presentation back in February to the board, has this been adopted or where is it in the process?
It was presented in February, and then Lisa and I did a presentation for all of the district nurses, because at each building, the district nurses are going to be the team leaders for the team of people that oversee students with concussions. I do want to point out, because we were talking about athletics, this return to learn protocol is for any student in the district that suffers a concussion. So if a student, something happens on the weekend, they go to the doctor, we get a note from the doctor saying the student has a diagnosed concussion, the return to learn protocol kicks into place. So I just want to clarify that this isn't just for student athletes, it's for all of our students.
We've expanded beyond what was already in place.
Yes.
And that's probably telling in today's day and age that we have to take that step and be proactive. So how does it work, Lisa? I'm a parent of a child who suffered a concussion, as Donna said, doing something over the weekend.
Right.
Coming to school on Monday or Tuesday with a note from the doctor, and what happens?
Right. So the first thing is exactly as you said, that written documentation from a healthcare professional indicating that the student has a concussion. At that point, that note would come into our school nurses, and the school nurses would initiate the protocol at that point. So there are 5 stages to the protocol, the first being the black stage. Each one is color-coded, and that's where the student should really be at home and rest. Some doctors will, suggest a longer time at home. Others will suggest a shorter time. In all of the research that we did, other protocols of this kind, the expected, and again, everybody's journey through this protocol is different, the expected time that a student would be at home, no physical activity, no cognitive activity. The most important thing is no screens, no cell phones, no videos, no TVs, etc., is a day or 2. So once a student is able to get up, prepare themselves for school, get ready for school without their symptoms worsening, then they would come back to school and start attending classes again. So at that point, they would enter the red stage. In the red stage, we really got feedback from students who had suffered significant concussions and were out for long-term, much like the PSA talked about post-concussion syndrome, In speaking with a couple of students, they said the most difficult part about coming back to school was the social emotional piece. How do they, re-engage with their peers even though they weren't feeling so great? So a lot of them said that when they were home for a extended period of time, 2, 3, 4 weeks, the anxiety made their symptoms worse because they couldn't re-engage. So the red stage suggests that students come to school, they attend their classes, but they don't do any work. So they're not doing classwork, they're not doing reading. Again, they're not on the computer doing any kind of research or anything like that.
So it's more socialization.
Correct. Plus also being in the environment, if you're in a class that's doing a Socratic seminar, you can, participate verbally. You may pick up some of the information by hearing it and engaging in that way with the material as well. So students in the red stage, if they can sit in class for a full day without their symptoms getting worse, then they move on to the next stage. And the next stage, the orange stage, would be students are again attending class, but they're doing now 50% of the work. So that's where their gradual increase happens. 50% of the reading, 50% of the classwork, 50% of the homework. Very, very minimal on any of the assessments, so we wouldn't put them through our state testing if they were in any of these stages at this point. Once students can do that for 2 full days without their symptoms worsening, then we'll move them on into the yellow stage where they're doing all of their classwork, all of their homework, and maybe minimal assessments, small assessments, not lengthy, write an essay for an hour type assessment. But assessments in this stage could be modified if a student needs larger font or colored paper, or maybe the student needs to take the assessment in a quiet room by themselves so they're not distracted by their peers. So that would be the yellow stage. Once students, again, can do that type of work for a couple of days without worsening symptoms, then they would meet with members of the team, counselors, teachers, nurse, administrator, etc., to develop the makeup plan for all of the work that needs to be made up, come up with that plan, and then once they're ready to move forward with that, then they would be in the full return to learn at that point, which is the green stage. They're back 100%.
You mentioned, Donna, that the school nurses were the key piece to the team in each building. Will each building function in the same manner, or will it be kind of a cookie cutter design for each specific school in the city?
Well, actually, one of the things we also presented to the principals and the directors before we presented to the school nurses, and each school had to submit a form to either myself or Dr. McKinney for elementary, so that each school, there's certain roles and certain things that have to be fulfilled, and each school had the ability to develop their school plan in the way that works best for them in terms of the team members and who's going to be involved. But the protocol has to be standard in terms of how it's followed, but how it's implemented can vary from building to building based on the size of the building, the number of students, the needs of the administrators in the district in terms of being able to manage it. So there is some ability for people to personalize it for their building.
This is serious. How receptive were the principals, the nurses, and others that when this was presented to them?
I feel like we got an overwhelmingly positive response. I think that administrators and nurses recognize that we're struggling with this in terms of, for a variety of reasons, students suffering concussions and everybody not being clear about how are we supposed to handle this. And so what we've really done is we've presented a protocol and a format so people feel more confident about, okay, how should I approach this? And how should we work with these families and with these students to help them be able to get through the concussion but continue to feel like they're part of the school.
And it's a joint effort between the school and the family to keep the child going, if you will, so that they don't miss out or don't fall too far behind.
Right. And when it comes to the green stage and the makeup, that's also individualized based on what teachers feel it's necessary for the student to make up to show that they understand the material and that they have competence in the material. As opposed to making up every single assignment they missed. So there's individual differences in that part of the plan as well.
Lisa, is there a specific period of time that this protocol plays through, or is it based on each individual child and their recovery, if you will?
Right, that's a great question, because each individual is different. Different severity of symptoms, different amount of symptoms. So there's an expected number of days that at each stage, but it's all based on the individual student. And throughout each stage, feedback is going to be received from the teachers, from the student, from the parents, and from the school nurse in terms of how does this student compare to yesterday? How does this student compare to how they were before their concussion? And that's what's going to gauge the progress through each stage.
So a lot has changed. I mean, you've coached for many years, you were a teacher, and this is another evolution in what schools are being asked to do today.
Right. And this is not something that's brand new, that we haven't been doing these things for our students with concussions. It's just prior to the protocol, you know, teachers and administrators would be asked to have formal meetings to implement a 504 plan or even have a special ed referral to do an individual education plan, an IEP. So this is helping students who it's a temporary thing, hopefully in most of our cases with our concussions. You know, after a few weeks, they may be back to full loads, whereas there are some students who have such severe concussions that they may have to go through those formal support services through our district.
Donna, have you gotten any feedback from parents in the district on this yet? Or?
We actually worked closely with one parent of a student who had severe concussion problems, and it was because her second concussion was in such close proximity to her first concussion. And so getting feedback from that parent was really helpful to get a parent perspective on how the schools can work with them and things that would make it easier for the parent, because for some parents, the educational system can be very intimidating.
And I think we saw in the video too, Brooke saying that if you've had one, the odds are pretty good you're going to have a second. And if you had a second, the odds are pretty good you have a third, maybe even a fourth. And not all the time, initially, may this be picked up by parents.
Right, right.
Especially if it happens away from school, at home.
Exactly. I mean, we've had situations where, you know, obviously I'm more aware of our student athletes that have concussions, but we've had student athletes that get concussions playing sports for other teams that aren't even our school teams, or get into car accidents, or fall down the stairs sometimes, or, you know, things like that. So it's important that people are aware that it's a big deal. You only have one brain in there.
Is there anything we haven't touched upon that you think our listeners and viewers should know about this? And
Well, we have been piloting in a few schools, but the plan moving forward is to have all of the teachers trained, so that moving into the fall, everyone in the district that is responsible for students will have an understanding of the concussion protocol and be able to implement it, so that we will have it district-wide at that point.
is any information available on the school district website just yet? Or if people want to learn more, who could they turn to, or where do they go?
I do know that the Return to Learn presentation that we presented to the Board of Ed on February 12th is posted under the Board of Ed meeting minutes. And the concussion brochure that we developed that has a little snippet on the Return to Learn protocol is posted on the district website under For Students.
All right. Well, great job. Not an easy topic, and not something, as I said earlier, that you would associate with the classroom. It would be more athletics, but again, schools are changing and the services are evolving, and you both, along with the district, are to be commended for coming up with this program.
And I would be remiss if I didn't thank all the other people that served on the committee, including our athletic trainer for the district, who is very knowledgeable, Jerry, I can't remember his last name. Jerry Holland, and our head nurse was there, and representatives from each level of the school districts, whether it was administrator, but we had a good representation on the committee, and I need to thank those folks as well for giving their time and participating.
Definitely.
Well, it's not something that one person can do. It takes a team. And again, we congratulate you and thank you for being with us here today.
Thank you.
We've been talking with Donna Fitzpatrick, Assistant Superintendent of Schools, and Lisa Gingras, Athletic Director for the Nashua School District, about their new concussion protocols, Return to Learn in the classroom. You've been watching eYe on Education. I'm your host, Ed Leicius. We'll see you again next time. Thank you.